string and integer data types. The question is, how are the string and integer data types used in Java? The string and integer data types are what we call primitive data types, and they're used to store values in a variable. So we talked about variables and we said they're used to store information from the user. But whenever you want to store information from the user, you have to specify what kind of data is that information. Now the first one, string data type. This type of data is used to store text-like or alphanumeric information. Data types are always coupled with variables in a Java program. So examples of how we can use string data types in a Java program include, let's look at the first one. It says, asking the user the question of, what is your home address? So if this question is displayed on the user screen, the user would have to enter their home address. So imagine that the user enters this, 21st Lane Avenue. So what kind of data is this? This is what we call a string data. Why? Because it's made up of letters, even though you have a number, but it's made up of numbers and letters together, so it's alphanumeric. And alphanumeric-like information is stored as a string data type. So when you are actually assigning a specific type of data to store this information, it's going to be string. Let's look at the second example. Enter a password. A password is also alphanumeric. It's made up of actually letters, characters, and numbers, but it's still, again, stored under the string data type. So it can be stored under integers or numbers because it's not just solely numbers, but it's a mix of different things. So these are examples of data or information that you receive from the user that are stored under string data types. Now let's look at the second type of data, integer. Integers are used to store numbers that are whole, which means numbers that do not contain decimals. Now, this is really simple to understand because, numbers without decimals are, you could basically ask for age, you get a number without decimal in that point of view. You could tell the user to guess a number like I've given here. There are so many other examples where you'd specify that you just need whole numbers. So as you can see in this program output, which means the question that's going to be displayed on the user screen, how old are you, would require the user to enter certain data, and in this case, they can only enter numbers without decimal. So for example, if the user enters 21, then you need to specify to the computer what kind of data that is. And of course, 21 is a number without decimal, so it's going to be stored as an integer. So integers are always numbers without decimals. Now let's look at the second example. If you ask the user to guess a number, then obviously the user could guess, literally they could also guess numbers with decimals, or think about the first instance. They're going to be guessing numbers without decimals. And so in such a thing, you would specify to the computer that you need the data that would be entered by the user to be numbers without decimals. So that's where you have to specify integer. So integer in Java means it's a type of data that means you're requiring the user to enter numbers that do not contain decimals. Now again, we're going to be looking at how string and integer data types are applied in a Java program. Let's move on to the third programming language concept.